Hello, hello, everyone. Welcome to the webinar here. We'll get started here just in a few seconds. Oh, Jeff decides to join us.
Sorry, guys. I don't know what happened to my machine.
No, you're
Just
fine.
decided to reboot.
You're fine. So, Jeff, we are live and people are coming in and joining. So, guys, thank you so much for coming on today. Today, we're going to be talking about the DoD suspending CMC Phase 2 and what does that mean for you as a defense contractor? And also, if you're MSP servicing clients, what does that mean for you as well? We'll get started here in a few seconds. John, Jeff, Bo, thank you guys for joining.
Thanks for
Thanks
having
for
me.
having us.
Happy to be here.
Bo, he's always got the Bo's always got the I'm flying a helicopter look.
You, you know,
What do you do, right?
that's right. That's right.
All right, guys. Again, welcome to the webinar. This is going to be talking about today why the DoD suspends CMC Phase 2 and what does that mean for you as a defense contractor. And if you're an MSP listening to this, what does this mean for you and your clients? Today's series is hosted by Vector Choice and MSP Mastery. A little bit about me. My name is Will Nobles. I'm going to be your moderator today. And so a little bit about me. I founded Vector Choice in 2008. We have 7 locations across the United States where we provide IT, managed services, cybersecurity, AI, and compliance for medium and small businesses. But also, I am a master coach at the MSP Mastery Group, where we coach MSPs on how to grow their company through peer groups and help you with a framework of being a great leader. So there's a few things before we get started with the webinar today. What Vector Choice does and where do we serve? So we have offices across the country, as you see over here: Atlanta, Houston, Philly, Nashville, Washington, D.C., New Bern, and Lubbock, and the surrounding areas around those cities. And we provide managed IT services, cybersecurity services, compliance services, AI, cloud solutions, VoIP solutions, and we also provide compliance and AI for MSPs and their clients. If you don't have the ability to have that in-house, we will provide that to you, white label, where you can use us to do that. MSP Mastery we have different options here and at the end, you can ask questions about that and stuff as well. But MSP Mastery, we have an MSP Executive Retreat, a Breakthrough Day. We have different mastery groups, and we have different other services there as well to provide MSPs to be very successful in growing your business. So enough of that, and let's talk about our panelists today. So our panelist, Bo Dickey, is the Chief Security Officer at Vector Choice. He's been in technology for 20 years. He lives in Mobile, Alabama. And so he comes with a different view. He manages the SecOps and compliance team at Vector Choice, and he actually comes with a view of not just technology and cybersecurity, but also law enforcement as well as his background. And I'll let him talk a little bit about himself here in a second. The big guy he doesn't look as big as he is, but what, Jeff, you're 6'7", right? 6'7", 6'8". Jeff, he looks small when it comes on the camera, but standing beside him, he is huge. I actually saw a picture, Jeff, of you, Logan, and Conrad Martin standing beside Logan, had Logan in the middle in the picture, and it's hilarious. But Jeff is the owner of Sarah Brand. It's a global cybersecurity auditing advisory firm. He is a 3PAO. Let him talk about all his certs that his company has and what he can do from CMMC and getting the actual audit done for CMMC as well there. John DePero is our military guy. He's got 15 years of counterintelligence in the U.S. Army. Worked with the NSA on the first cybersecurity defense work group there. He actually was a chief compliance officer at Vector Choice for a few years, and then moved to Kaseya, where he was VP of FedRAMP and Compliance Solutions at Kaseya. And so John's like medium retired right now. We'll let him fill that in, but he's somewhat retired, but he is still wanting to educate customers, companies about compliance there as well. Guys, thank you so much for being on today with us.
Thanks for having us.
So here's the first question. John, I'm going to start with you on the question. What did exactly did DoD suspend, and what did they not suspend when it comes to CMMC?
CMMC is supposed to be a phased rollout. What they suspended was phase 2, and by extension, phase 3, right? So phase 2 was when mandatory third-party assessments were going to be a requirement pre-award for a contract. Meaning you can't even win the contract if you don't have a CMMC level 2 from a C3PAO. That wasn't going to apply to all contracts, but it was going to be one of the items on the menu that the DoD could choose from when they're creating a new contract. That is what was suspended. And I'll clarify some things because there's lots of experts on Reddit and LinkedIn and everything. That is suspended indefinitely. They just haven't told us how long. Then there's this 60-day review. People think it's suspended for 60 days. It's suspended indefinitely. That could change tomorrow or it could change 2 years from now. We don't know. The 60 days is they've asked for some public comment on CMMC, and the new DoD CIO put together a task force to reevaluate CMMC. The 60 days is how long they have to come back to the CIO with the results of their findings. Level 1, which is what it is, and then level 2 self-assessments are not suspended, right? So the self-attestation of you going into the Supplier Performance Risks System, SPRS, and uploading your SPRS score, none of that's changed. The only thing that's changed is we've suspended the requirement to have a C3PO give you a level 2 prior to award.
And that was the November deadline for 2026, correct?
So again, it wasn't a deadline. That was the beginning of phase 2.
Okay.
So again, lots of bad information out on LinkedIn and Reddit. So there's two things, and then I'm going to pass it back to Jeff because he's got some good feedback here. There's what the government literally says, and then there's what the industry is doing. And there's a chasm in between them. So what the government said with November was, starting in November, phase 2 means a contracting officer can mandate CMMC level 2 third-party assessment prior to an award. Didn't mean they're going to. Didn't mean, there's millions of defense contracts, right? I was at dinner last night with a very senior leader in the DoD Inspector General group, right? And we were talking about the millions of contracts and how many they thought would have CMMC level 2. Like, there's different opinions here. The real problem we have, Will, is that the primes, the Lockheed Martins, the Northrop Grummans, like these big companies, they were just mandating all the way down through their supply chain, you'd better be level 2 or we're not using you next year. So we have to separate what the government literally said versus what the industry's actually doing.
Okay. All right. So Jeff, will you elaborate on that, but also elaborate, why did the DoD make this decision now?
Okay, great question. So just to, Will kind of talked about our background. So Sarah Brand, just so you understand, we're a 15-year business. We were started by 3 Air Force guys. That's our founders. We're a FedRAMP assessor. We became a FedRAMP assessor, or what people call a third-party assessor organization, 3PAO, in 2017. We're also a GovRAMP 3PAO, and then we are a CMMC C3PAO, so we do CMMC assessments. And so the question of why now? The first thing to know is that every single CIO for the last 8 years who've come in has paused the CMMC program in some way or shape. And they come in, they pause it because, well, first of all, you're trying to enforce a standard on an industry. We could talk chapter and verse about all the negatives about what does and doesn't work. And the small business is adversely affected. I don't know anybody who really thinks, oh, the small business isn't. It's particularly hit hard. But what really started is a few things here. Number one, the current CIO, her name is Miss Davies. She came from big industry. She came from Estee Lauder as a CIO, and she walked into a very big job. And essentially, the Small Business Administration put out a study that said, hey, how is this affecting small businesses? And they came back and said, look, DOW or DOD, the sales brochure does not match what you said was going to happen. You told us this was maybe 70,000 companies and this was going to cost about maybe 40, 50 grand. But in the small print down there, it said the assessment cost. They didn't talk about the full program cost. Well, the SBA said, wait a minute, this is way over 100,000 companies. And this is costing people on average $600,000 full program. So you get enough small contractors. And by the way, John's point of it gets applied, just pushed down the supply chain unequally. And I have currently, right now, at least 5 assessment clients who have no CUI, like they do not have any of this material at all. They never will. But their prime basically said, you want to continue to be a supplier for us, you're going to get the level 2 certification. That's the kind of stuff that this program, and you get that in the press and you get that to the Small Business Association and you get pitchforks, and that's what causes a lot of the heartburn. So you take the Small Business Association's report that came out, it was no accident that on Monday, the CIO, Miss Davies, was sitting right next to the Undersecretary of War Duffy. Because remember, there's 2 sides of this. How it applies to a contract, the DFARS clauses, and then the actual requirements of what cybersecurity has to happen for the defense and industrial base. So they were there together, show of force, put it out. And then right after that, the Small Business Association, she put out an announcement and a video. So this was a coordinated deal. And that's why it happened now.
So Jeff, should a defense contractor look at this as a delay, reset, or what should they be looking at this decision?
So it's a great question. First, I have to say is I don't have a crystal ball. I mean, nobody can 100% tell you what's going to happen. What I can say is I've been watching this program now. The very first client we ever had for 800-171 was in 2015. So we've been doing this 11 years. And I've been through each one of those pauses. And if you guys remember, when we went from CMMC 1.0 to 2.0, that was a complete program shutdown. Like you couldn't do anything. Today, we're still doing assessments today. I can still issue a certification today, and it will show up in the SPRS system. So we're still doing assessments. It's as John said, it's just not contractually going to be obligated after November 10th before award. All right. So the question, what do I think is going to happen? I think that they're going to extend. I don't think they're going to get away with it. They're going to get rid of assessments. I don't actually think they are. I think that the only thing in the last 11 years that has moved the defense industrial base to get cybersecurity put in place has been the concept that you're going to be validated by a third party. Now, do I think the way we're doing it now is the best way? No. Could we make it cheaper? 100%. Could we make it easier? Yes. Happy to go into what all those things are that would make this better. But for your question, on Tuesday, we had a meeting with the Cyber AB and all of the owners of the C3PAOs. The former CIO, Stacy Bosvanovich, was on that call. All the big primes have gotten together and basically said, we're all doing this or we're not, or none of us are doing it. Like we're going to be together on this. Number 2 is that they were already going to the DOW and asking for a bit of a pause. And the reason is the war in Iran is really depleting our munitions. Like, we haven't had a war that has gone through supplies like this. And John, I don't know how long, maybe World War II, I don't know when, but at an unprecedented rate. And the primes have been said, look, you want us to increase production, and CMMC is important, but I need you to give us a little bit more time so we can focus on this.
Sure.
And they were going to ask for 6 more months, is what we think. So I think assessments will push out a year, is what I think. The requirement for assessments will push out a year. I think number 2, they will do a better job of saying who has to have one.
Yep. Okay.
Right? There's the over marking of CUI, the telling somebody who provides, glass and metal and steel alloys to commercial and military, where there's zero reason that they need a level 2 certification. I think you got to start getting a lot of those guys exceptioned out of this deal.
Yeah.
Right.
Okay. Thanks, Jeff. Appreciate
otherwise,
it.
Otherwise, this is still a PR nightmare for them, so forth. That was a lot. Sorry about that.
Yeah, no, good. No, good stuff. Good stuff. And guys, anybody on the here, if you have questions, please throw it in the chat, and I'll get to those questions for you guys and ask those of the team here. No, I'm being told to put it in the Q&A. Sorry, my boss is telling me to make sure everybody puts in the Q&A. So, Bo, I'm going to go to you next. If I'm a defense contractor, should I stop my CMC efforts? Why or why not?
No, phase 1 and the DFARS clauses are still required. So you still have to go through and complete those processes. You still got to have the CMMC 2.0 80171 controls still have to be in place. We're focusing on pushing those initiatives and doing the self-certifications for the clients that we're dealing with, where they still want to be able to bid and they still want to be able to provide services to the DOW contracts. So I'm not advising any of my clients to stop. I'm telling them the framework's still there. You still have to do the things. The only thing we're pausing right now is getting the C3PO certification. So I'm not having to call Jeff as often to say, and keeping him as busy to issue the certifications for my clients. So that's where I'm looking at this from that perspective and advising my customers.
Okay. All right. And John, how does this affect the DoD or DOW, sorry, contracts today? How does it, John? How does it affect things?
So you've heard me say for years, CMMC is more of a contract compliance issue than a cybersecurity program. I mean, what's CMMC? Cybersecurity Maturity Model Certification. It's not a maturity model, and the certifications are gone. So it's really a contracts issue, right? So the DFART, without getting down a rabbit hole of how defense contracting works, we have the FAR, which is the Federal Acquisition Regulation, right? Then the DFAR is the one for the DoD. In 2018, well, it was written prior to that, but as of 2018, the DFARS, we call it the 7012 clause, mandates if you have CY, you have to protect it in accordance with NIST Special Publication 800-171. That hasn't changed. That's in your contract. It's in it today. It was in it last year. None of that has changed. So you have a contractual obligation to protect CY in accordance with DFAR 7012. Okay? None of that has changed. What's interesting is there's a new proposed FAR rule. So the defense is underneath the federal government. So the FAR rule would apply to GSA, DoD, and NASA. So it's everybody who buys stuff in the federal government. The FAR rule is taking things a step further. So it's kind of interesting. The DoD is backing down when the FAR rule's going further. They want NIST 800-171 Rev 3. So there's a lot of TBD. I would have to double down on what Bo said. You should still be if you can't meet the 2018 standard, you're going to be in a bad position for whatever they figure out next, right? Jeff had some thoughts on what's coming next. I agree, but maybe with different language. I think you're going to see absolutely laser specific. You're going to have to put on a form what specifically is CUI in the contract. So everyone can go back to that form and see what is CUI. That's in the FAR rule. It just hasn't happened. It's not in the DFAR rule. Second, the whole CMMC program, because of the FAR rule, the DFAR's rule, is built on confidentiality. Well, DoD has a level classification called confidential. They chose not to use it. So we're taking unclassified and treating it like the whole thing's a train wreck. So what you're going to see is fewer items that they'll get more attention. So right now we're doing a little attention to everything. It's not working. We're going to back that off to a very small number of things that will get a lot of attention. And, Jeff mentioned the war in Iran. Nobody cares if Russia finds out how thick your ball bearing is right now. What they want are the ball bearing. Availability is more important right now than confidentiality. So I think you're going to see an emphasis placed throughout the defense industrial base on availability. Cyber is a piece of that, right? Ransomware and DDoS. So I think you're going to see availability take the front seat, and confidentiality for this unclassified stuff will be deprioritized, right? But we all know how long it takes the federal government to change rules. Like that's, who knows when that's going to come out.
Yeah.
The FAR rule will come out. The expectations comes out in January. It's still working its way, but it's very important. The specific part is currently the DoD has an exception in place, so you can use revision 2, right? And the rest of the federal government has already moved on to Rev 3. Department of Energy requires Rev 3. GSA currently Rev 3. The FAR rule will push Rev 3. And so, the DoD is not only, like you said, sort of behind and trying to figure out how to get compliance. And I completely agree with him. You've got to narrow it down and get focused on where it should be and try to not have all of these other folks get wrapped up in this stuff, because that's where people feel the inequity and really, really get vocal. Like I said before.
Yeah,
Okay.
I talk about my exhaust pipe company. The bulk of their business is exhaust or classic cars. They take a piece of aluminum pipe, they bend it twice, now it's exhaust pipe, right? They sell one exhaust pipe to some Air Force little cart that drives around a flight line. They left the defense industrial base. There was no reason for them. They bend a piece of aluminum pipe twice, right? And they left. How does that help the warfighter, right? So
It doesn't.
So I get some questions here, and I apologize, I'm getting caught up with questions. But Jeff, you mentioned zero risk for subs. Why is there zero risk for subs that you mentioned earlier?
Zero risk for subs.
I didn't hear that.
What context did I say that in? I didn't hear that.
Not for sure. And Scaly, if you elaborate in the question for me, I'll get that answer for you. So Brian asked, in terms of revenue for MSPs and the opportunities here, do you see any of this changing, such as reducing urgency and clients not taking it serious?
As the MSP here, I've seen no decrease. I've actually still seen more and more customers coming in because a lot of them are looking for the ability to just bid on contracts. So they still have to have at least a CMMC level 1. So the work is still coming in. They're still having to meet the requirements. Again, like I said before, phase 1 is still there. The DFARS clauses are still in place. So there's still work there for you as the MSP to be able to help these clients to build their infrastructure or build policies to meet the requirements that they have.
And good,
Let me comment on that one a little bit, because we sold an assessment yesterday. Think about that. And they're very knowledgeable. And the concept was for them was, we're too far down, a lot of people are too far down the road. 95% of our assessments that are in progress are going forward. I was stunned by that. Stunned. And what they've all said is, well, I've heard different things. It's the right thing to do. We're too far down the road. We got to get it. Number 3, it still makes me more competitive against I have something they don't. And then the one that's sort of out there that a lot of people don't necessarily think about, but it matters. If you have a level 2 certification by a third party, by a C3PAO, and DIPCAC were to come investigate, the chances you're going to get sent over to the Department of Justice is virtually none. Because if there's a problem in there, they're not going to be upset with them. They're going to be upset with the C3PAO that certified it. So there's an insurance perspective here of not only did I do all the stuff that Bo is advising and that the MSP has had to help and all that, now I've got a third party, official third party that said this is legit. That's a lot of insurance in that. That was one I heard over the last 2 days I wasn't expecting.
And Jeff, Jeff
Let me
Davis
get
has.
back on that real quick.
Yep.
Because if I'm anything, I'm a risk guy, right? Everything on that last thing Jeff said is 100% true. There have been 4 million defense contracts written since DFAR 7012 clause came into effect. 4 million contracts. Times how many subs and it's massive. There have been 6 or 8 fraud prosecutions. So you have better chance at playing Mega Millions than worrying about that. But when back to risk, Jeff and I are working on a project together where I prep them for assessment, and Jeff's still coming in to do the assessment. Like, they're moving on because it's a value prop. When they go to their customers, they say, you can trust us in your supply chain. We've got our level 2. We're not a risky vendor. Keep buying from us because you don't have to worry about us, right? Now, that's a real risk that impacts their business. Their sales team got sick of having to justify why they can be on the contract. They're getting a level 2 just to say box check. I hate to say box check, guys, but that's why they're doing it, to make themselves easy to do business with.
Yep. So Jeff Davis has a good question here. You guys are talking around this. Is my question for is if a client started a CMMC level 2 project today, what would you tell them to prioritize first? Any of you guys?
All right. If you're starting level 2 project, and when you say level 2, let's talk about what that means. Because level 2, are you talking about you're at the beginning and you're starting to look at 800-171 and you really haven't done any of that? Or are you talking about starting level 2 assessment? Those are pretty different time frames.
Yeah. So Jeff, what he might be putting that in there, I guess what are the requirements that still exist for phase 2, even with it suspended? And maybe that'll answer that question as well.
Repeat that. I just saw Skelly came back with the question, so they clarified what they meant, and I was reading it. Ask the question again, Will.
So what requirements still exist, even though CMC level phase 2 has been suspended? What are the requirements? And that might answer Jeff's question as well.
Yeah, so let's John was going there, but Bo even started this, right? So the clauses that matter, okay? DFARS, and it's you can get into all that too. 255, 204, 2 whatever. It ends in 7021. That's the original. You got to put in the cybersecurity 800-171. Then when you move forward, CMMC is actually DFARS 7021. So that goes on the contract and says CMMC applies here. You have to have one of the 3 levels, level 1, level 2, level 3. But DFARS 7025 is what tells you what level that contract has to have. And the options are level 1 self, level 2 self, level 2 C3PAO, or level 3 that's assessed by the DIPCAC themselves. And the reason John said that this was never a deadline is that the DOW always had a brake and accelerator way. They can start with a level 2 C3PAO and then back it off to a level two self, or even down to a level one self if they weren't getting enough bidders on a contract. They have the ability to accelerate or to slow down. That's why it really was never actually a deadline. It just got put out there that way. So you're still going to see 70-21 applied to the contract. You still will probably see 70-25 determine either level one self or level two self, right? And what they're saying is we're not going to require level two C3PAO. One caveat: a prime contractor can do what they want to.
Yep.
A prime contractor can say, and let me give you an example. L3 and Leidos said, I don't care about November 10th. July 30th, you're having this. We want to see it by July 30th. And we had multiple people we had to rush and get them assessed and certified.
Lockheed,
So that,
Harris,
right?
all
Because, yeah. And so the prime is different than what the actual DFARS clauses and what the contracting officers are doing, which John probably knows a lot better than I do. So
that's what I said earlier in discussion. There's what the government literally says. Then there's what your customer's telling you, right? And if your customer is the government, that's fine. That's great. You're a government contractor. But if it's not, which most SMBs are selling to, they're selling up the supply chain. It doesn't matter what DFAR says. If your customer says jump, you got a choice to make, right? Jump or don't.
So John, from and you and Bo as well, how we're talking about primes and subcontractors. How does it affect? How does it impact the primes right now? And then what should subcontractors be thinking about? Bo, you want to start on that first, and then I'll go to the other two.
I mean, it for the primes, most of the primes have already gotten their CMMC level 2, so they're not really as impacted as your further down the chain people are, who are being brought in by the primes to take on some of the new contracts. So the ripple effect is the prime, like everybody else has already said, the government says this, but the prime can come in and say, we still want you to get the C3PAO assessment if you're going to be one of our vendors, or that we're going to buy from you and spend lots of money with you. And then, so it's still what the prime says when they're selecting who their subcontractors are going to be as to what they flow down to those subs. So pay attention to your contracts. The only thing I've seen that actually has to be done from the primes is if they had that it was required, or maybe it's actually the DOW. If it said in the contract that it was required they be a CMMC level 2 C3PAO assessed, and that had to flow down, they have to go back and remove that language.
Yep. Jeff, John, anything to add on that part?
No, you got risk. When you look at risk and what problem we're solving for, Lockheed has a very different view of this than Jeff Farr, John DePero, or Bob's Ball Bearing Company. It costs Lockheed millions of dollars to find and acquire new vendors. They don't want to do it. They want to find who's going to make their ball bearings and lock in with them and not move, right? So their risk is very different than the government's risk, than the contract, right? So we talk about the war, look, those of you who know me, like I missed my kids growing up doing information security for the government, living overseas. Like you don't have to wave the patriotism flag. And everyone on LinkedIn's talking about, the war fighter and, race, but nobody cares about that at these big primes. They're looking at how much does it cost for me to find a new ball bearing company, right? And if you want to keep doing business with them, you're going to play by their rules. There was a question asked, what can I do to get started? What would I do right? The first thing is you have to have a standardized system security plan that's defensible. I don't care if it's for CMMC, FTC safeguards, HIPAA. I don't care what you do. If you can't defend your cybersecurity decisions, and if you can't prove that things you think are in place work the way you designed, you're already behind the 8 ball. But you can't do that unless you know what information you have and what needs protected. The number one problem I have when I go in to do these CMMC projects is no one ever understands where their CUI is, who nobody knows. So they think they know, and we start building, then we find, oh, well, what about accounting? Oh, and the purchasing department, they have to know the parts. So the scope always starts this big and it grows as we do the project. The number one thing a business can do is understand what data they have that needs protected and how the organization uses it, right? Where it is. Write it on a dry erase board. But if you can't answer those questions in finite detail, you'll never be able to demonstrate how you protect it, how you back it up, right? And what regulations govern it.
So, John, does NIST 800 171 should that still be the foundation for contractors to follow on that?
For the CUI,
Okay.
right? It doesn't. So again, I get beat up for this all the time. CMMC is not a cybersecurity program. It's a contract compliance program, right? You know what the fastest way to get your backups to pass one of Jeff's CMMC audits is? Don't have backups.
I don't know how I own that shit. Wait, Jeff audit. Holy crap.
You're accountable for every audit I've ever been through right now today. So, but I mean, I say it jokingly, but I mean, just don't have them and you don't have to worry about them being set up right. But that might not be your business goal, right? So you have to separate defending your CMMC enclave that you built is a contract compliance issue. It may or may not work with your total business objectives. And they're both important. It's not one or the other. You need to do both.
Yeah, I'm going to piggyback off of that and sort of answer a couple of questions I see on there. And, Brian asked one that I don't know if I went directly at. And then Skelly, your question, now I understand what you were talking about. What my comment was is that there are a lot of companies being caught up, contractors being caught up in getting a level 2 assessment when they don't really have CUI and it really shouldn't apply to them. They don't have any risk to the warfighter, even though they're being pulled into the program and having to spend money and so forth. So that was what I meant by that. Brian, your question on MSPs and what they were going to do. Now I'm going to get a little bit of my soapbox here. Okay, just bear with me a second. This gets into could we improve the program overall. First of all, stop vilifying MSPs. Okay, the CMMC program, I don't know where somehow all of a sudden MSPs were somehow the enemy about this deal. The fact that we will not allow, John just talked about this, the fact that we require FedRAMP level tools in a lot of situations where that does not increase security in any measurable way. It's just, and by the way, FedRAMP level tools are 3 times the cost of commercial tools. So allow MSPs to use commercial grade security tools. It's still much better than what's out there. And it would work just fine. That's a big cost driver when somebody's got to switch out of their M365, Microsoft Office 365, and then they got to go to the government cloud, and it's, that's a big cost. All right, number 2, like I said, don't make the MSPs turn into pretzels so they can work with a defense contractor, right? Is CrowdStrike Federal that much more secure than CrowdStrike Commercial? Depends on your perspective, but for what we're talking about, basically no. Okay. So that's a little bit of a soapbox. And then, on the MSPs, the reason it matters is the vast majority of the defense industrial base is medium and small business. That is by far the biggest constituency. And they rely on their MSP. And so when you go in, you tell most everybody, you either got to change your MSP or you've got to really, go completely to somebody else. And the costs are going to go up dramatically. In my opinion, without a measurable increase in cybersecurity, that's something you go hit right now and you can help fix. My last one. On every assessment, I have to put 2.7 assessors on every assessment. There's no reason we can't assess that environment correctly with half that.
Yes,
None,
I
right?
that's another
And
prediction I'll have that touches on that. If you look
yeah,
at what
that one
FedRAMP,
changes things.
GovRAMP, TextRAMP, if you look at what the other assessment programs in the government are doing, they've moved away. FedRAMP got rid of SSPs altogether, right? They have, to Jeff's point, there's multiple tiers now of what's appropriate for what you're doing, right? They call them Class A, Class B, Class C, right? DoD's got to figure out some paperwork. They said there's this FedRAMP moderate equivalent. Well, that's a different topic we'll talk, but the DoD has rules in place that mandate things that don't exist anymore. Like, how are you gonna comply with something when the thing you've mandated doesn't exist? Um, the cyber AB, and I don't want to be like they're good people trying to do good work. I don't know how you take an inherently governmental function, which is deciding who's allowed to be a defense contractor, and send it off to a private organization that never bid for the work. They were just awarded the contract. I don't know how that works, right? And what we're seeing is that the cyber AB not being governmental, they can't make rules, right? And there's, to Jeff's point, who came up with 2.3? Like, none of it makes any sense. And it's contrary to what the rest of the federal government cybersecurity audit world is doing. We have to align more with FedRAMP 20X for CMMC. And another thing that's going to happen for small contractors are the services are going to just build, buy, pay for connectivity. They're just going to give you a VDI login so you can go to the Army's hosted domain, look at the drawing, get what you need, and then go back to work on your system, right? So the services need to step up and provide better access. I'll give you a true statement that's going to blow your mind. I can get you a secret level internet connection in your office and approved faster and cheaper than get you through a CMMC level 2, 3 PAO assessment. Secret's not supposed to be cheaper than unclassified. Secret's not supposed to be faster than unclassified. We have broken the DoD risk management concepts.
So, Jeff, a question for you. Does the suspension change DFAR security requirements, the cybersecurity
No,
requirements? No,
no, not at all.
Okay.
Because remember what Bo was talking about, 7012, which is NIST 800-171 revision 2, that is required. That clause has been on contracts since what, 2017. So that doesn't go away and it won't go away. What is being paused is, do you have to have a third party come assess it? Okay, that's what's being not just paused, but stopped. And then what does it look like coming out? What will an assessment look like? Who would it apply to? All of those things. What would all those things are up for grabs. But no, it does not change your security requirements at all. If you want another soapbox kind of thing on that, one of the challenges as assessors that we see is there's so much inconsistency in what your documentation is supposed to look like. Like, one of the things that we should have done a long time ago, publish a freaking example, like a really good one, multiple flavors, right? And actually say, this is what a full policy looks like. This is actually what a data flow diagram. These are the minimum requirements. You ask 10 lead assessors certain questions, you'll get 5 different answers.
So
that's not healthy.
And the other thing is, there's so many assessors who have no DoD background or very limited. They were a junior, enlisted in the military. The DoD has very specific definitions of inspection versus assessment. So when the DoD call it assessment, what the DoD means by that, and you can look up Joint Pub 3 the terms, right, for the DoD. An assessment is a measure of progress towards a stated goal. An inspection is the black and white yes, no, right? It's not meant to be an inspection. You know what the DoD could have done? Made it an inspection. They chose again the cyber AB, the CMMC evangelists, the CMMC world. They're great patriotic Americans trying to do what in their hearts they think is best, but they don't understand DoD risk management. The DoD accepted risk by making it unclassified. They accepted risk by making it an assessment, not an inspection, right? Jeff, using DoD lingo, you're not going to get the stuff you're asking for because the DoD was cool without having it. But we have this cottage industry that said, well, we don't believe that. We're gonna up the ante, right? That's not how assessments work in the DoD, right?
Yeah. Oh, so
Yeah.
what happens to contract if a contractor experiences a cyber attack today? Why the suspension is here? What should they do?
The same thing they've
Same
always
thing.
done. That
Yeah.
nothing.
I
That
know it's an obvious question and answer, but I had
yeah,
Hello.
yeah. I mean the requirements aren't going away. The initial requirement is still there. The only thing that is changing is that the C3PAO assessment is what's being stopped. Having that certification is what's being paused. That review process for that to actually be determined when that's needed is what's actually being reviewed. Everything else you've always done and that you've always been required to do is still there. It's not going away.
So, because we got 15 minutes left, but I wanted to make sure you ask any questions. You guys have additional questions, but Jeff, to put this in a synopsis of everything, right? What's your say?
Wow. Synopsis. How would I put this? There's a lot, right? Ultimately, every single component, a lot of this stuff came out because of 32 CFR. That's where all these rules came from, right? The 2.7 assessors, all of the rules came from 32 CFR. Everybody in the ecosystem has a way they could contribute and make this better. And what I mean by that is stop overmarking, right? That's one thing. Get much more specific about who actually has it. John had a great point. Put on the contract exactly what CUI is required. Because so many we talk to, they don't know if they have CUI or not. If they do, they're not really sure if it's marked correctly, all that stuff. So get that part done. Make the assessments much more palatable. Don't make them more pass-fail-ish. Make them more like ISO 9001 or, something they're used to, where you can give findings, they get time to remediate them, not just you fail them, right? That's I'm oversimplifying. I get that. The supply and demand imbalance that is the perspective that there is a big imbalance, and the way it was set up, having contractors, it elevated all those costs. We can change that. But so for me, this is about let's everybody take a look at where you're contributing, right? And let's find all the ways to make it narrower, cleaner, and get the cost down. Basically, right size the program.
Yeah.
Easier said than done.
Yeah. John, a question for you here. Should companies continue documenting their compliance and their system security plan and their POAMs? Should they continue doing that?
Yes. If you're a defense contractor today, whether prime or sub, nothing's alleviated your requirements under that DFARS, that 7012 clause or that Jeff was talking about. Nothing's removed your requirement to have your SPUR score uploaded and have your POAM. You can't have a SPUR score without an SSP. Can't have a POAM with SSP. So you have to be able to, I tell people all the time, SSPs are exercising grammar, not cybersecurity, right? Can you properly articulate what you're doing, and does the evidence match it? That is critical. And I could be honest with you, it's a good idea for all companies, regardless of CMMC or not, right? That's just good cybersecurity hygiene. And then, of course, your plan of action. POAM is the plan of action and milestones. So that's the SSP is everything we're going to do and how we're going to do it. And then maybe you haven't done something yet. That would go on the POAM. Or maybe something changed, right? We don't print CY, so we're good. And now we decide we're going to need to print it. Printers go on your POAM. That's what a POAM is for anybody unsure, right? So you are already required to do that. Nothing's changed since 2018. That is still a requirement. And I guarantee you, the moment the DoD takes that requirement away, we'll be on another webinar telling you you're good, right? But until you hear from us or see it all over LinkedIn, you absolutely have to keep doing that.
Yeah. And Bo, last question for you is what, their choice being an MSP, we work with clients directly, we work with MSPs and their clients. What's your last final words here of what you would say to subcontractors out there and MSPs?
Nothing's changed. The level, if you're at a level 2 and you have not reached the point where you're ready for the C3PAO assessment, you're still on target. You're still making the right steps and the right choices, and you're still spinning in the right direction to get to where you need to be. The C3PAO assessment for that certification is where we're gonna have some different conversations today than what we would have had a week ago.
Yeah.
Everything else is still exactly where you were at a week ago. It's still on track with whatever projects you were in the process of. If you were already in process of the assessment for the certification, don't suddenly stop and ask for a refund because the C3PO is not going to give it. And you should still go ahead and get it because it's going to keep you in that competitive, give you that market edge against your competition to still and give you that layer of insurance that Jeff and John talked about earlier.
Yep. And Jeff, from a 3PAO point of view on this, is what's your encouragement or recommendation for everybody?
Yeah, like I said, I think that I understand when somebody says, "Hey, I want to take a measured approach here. I don't want to go spend money on something I don't necessarily have to spend money on." I get that. Do I think there are reasons you would do it? And we talked about them before, whether it's insurance reasons, whether it's trying to get a competitive advantage, and so forth. So, I think it's a very different answer if 98% of your business is DoD versus 1% of your revenue is DoD. Those are two different answers, right? If you have a very low, you're dealing with one like John had, the guy who's got one contract, bends a metal two places, and you want to try to keep that. Okay, that the answer for them is very different than somebody who's making drones and that's what they do for a living. And so, if you really are heavily in the DoD, getting that assessment is going to help you in multiple ways. I don't know why you wouldn't continue to do it. For the rest of you, if you want to pause and see where it goes, or maybe do a mock, first, spread it out, use that mock to put it as a self-score. That I can see those things. Those are already happening. So different answer depending on who you are.
Now, Jeff said he doesn't have a crystal ball. I do. Right here. I got a crystal ball. If you want to be ready for what's coming next, think highly available systems and that the availability, so those backups, those redundant systems, you can demonstrate their compliance and security just as much as the primary. Be prepared for availability to be a significant thing you're measured against.
Guys, if you need any help, if you're a defense contractor on here or MSP that works with defense contractors and just needs help with CMMC, you can scan the QR code. But because we're talking about security here, I am going to have Miss Logan post in the chat the link so you don't have to scan the QR code. So that'll be in the chat for you there as well. And then John, let me get your last words on all of this. And like and you guys see how fast it went. These three can talk a lot, and well, actually, I'm going to include myself into it. We all four can talk a lot, but John, give me your last words here.
Semper Gumby. You get stay flexible. We're still arguing a rule that was written in 2016, implemented in 2017, and enforced in 2018. We're 8 years into this and haven't gone live. Stay flexible. Be able to defend what you write down.
Good, good. And guys, if you're an MSP listening here and you want to learn about more services that MSP Mastery Group can offer you, you can scan the QR code. But again, I'll have Miss Logan put that in chat. You can get on the calendar link. The Vector Choice one will get on mine and Bo's calendar, and then the other one will get on Logan and my calendar there as well. But guys, thank you so much for being on with me today. This was a huge announcement. I think it was important to hear from experts that are dealing with it, besides just hearing a whole bunch of things on Reddit and LinkedIn. Thank you guys so much for being on, and for the audience, thank you guys so much for attending. Have a wonderful day. Thanks, guys.
Thanks, everybody.